I've decided to entitle my few thoughts this morning, True Peace of Mind. True Peace of Mind. I'm going to begin by highlighting to you that when man sinned, there were some great things that men lost. There were some momentous things that men lost. One of the things that was lost to us was the presence of God. You realize that when Adam was created, God used to come down from heaven physically and meet with Adam and walk and talk with Adam. Adam could touch the one who created him. He could see his face. He could hear his voice literally. I often ask myself the question, I wonder what they talked about. You know, if I'm face to face with the one who created me, who can do everything, what would I speak to him about? What was that conversation like? But it used to happen, and it used to happen regularly. We had the presence of God with us, literally. And man lost that when we fell. Another thing that we lost was fellowship with the universal brotherhood. What do I mean by that? The Bible doesn't tell us specifically, but I believe that it is a safe assumption. I believe that angels were allowed to visit the newly created couple and have interaction with them. I don't believe that God made Adam and Eve and just left them out there in isolation by themselves. So I think angels used to visit, and they were in wonder and amazement at the things that they were seeing on earth. And it was a great privilege for them to interact with Adam and Eve. I also believe, and I'm assuming again, but I believe it's a safe assumption, that if man had remained loyal to God, man would eventually have been given the privilege of visiting other worlds as well, visiting heaven as well. But that privilege was lost to man when we fell. In fact, I see Brother Tony typing that my video is not showing. Is he the only one who has that issue? Or is everybody else seeing me?
It's okay, Daniel. We see
All
you.
right, thank you. So,
We're not seeing
brother,
you. We're not seeing you.
I don't see you.
all right. I'm not sure what is
I'm
happening
seeing you.
because
I'm
some
seeing
I
are
you.
see
seeing.
you.
What is happening?
I'm seeing you.
I can see
All right,
you.
some are seeing and some are not. So I apologize for that, brethren. I'm not sure what is happening, but maybe some of you could maybe exit and try to re-enter. But I'm hoping you are
You
hearing me
are
anyway.
not, excuse me, you're not using the same, um, you're using two different things. They have to view everyone in order to see you.
All right, thanks for that, Sister Esther. I'm actually showing my video using my laptop, but my microphone is not working on the laptop, so I'm using the microphone from my phone. So you are correct. I'm using two devices. Sister Esther is saying that if you switch your device to viewing everyone, then you'll be able to see. So thanks for that, Sister Esther. Right. So I was highlighting the point that man lost the privilege of fellowshipping with the universal brotherhood. Throughout history, whenever somebody saw an angel, it was an amazing and spectacular event to them. Many times they fell down to worship the angel. It was not like when Adam and Eve interacted with them like peers. That privilege was lost. Another thing we lost was paradise. Now, whenever we use the word paradise, many things come to the minds of different people. One of the things that the Caribbean is reputed for in some places is being paradise. Tourism is the number one economic activity we have here, and you will see them showing videos with white sandy beaches, clear blue seas, bright sunshine, palm trees, exotic plants. And I saw one video where the advertisement said, come and taste a slice of paradise. Now, to you folks over there in England and the US and Canada, where it gets ridiculously cold sometimes, I'm sure you would consider that to be paradise. But the things that we see today that we consider to be beautiful are just a dark, glum shadow of the way things were. They say that in the last 200 years, over 600 plants have become extinct. In the last 200 years, over 800 animals have become extinct. And that is just in the last 200 years. So if you take your minds back 6,000 years and imagine how many things existed in Eden that have now been lost, you can imagine that what we are seeing now is nothing compared to what that paradise was. That was paradise. Eden was a place that was bursting. It was a dazzling array of sensational beauties as far as the eye could see in every direction you turn. It was littered with exotic flowers and plants. There was exquisite fruit hanging low on every tree. I mean, I can imagine that there were lush, verdant, pleasant green meadows of placidity and calmness. There were sparkling waterfalls that were cascading down the slopes of majestic mountains. It was paradise. And I believe that it was a place where angels visited and they looked around in wonder and amazement at the things that God had created. It was paradise and it belonged to men, it belonged to us, and we lost it. The outcome of all of these things that we lost, and I would say the fourth thing that we lost, a monumental thing, a momentous thing, was that man lost his peace of mind. Man lost his peace of mind. Now I want to pause to give you the definition that I found for peace. One of the definitions that I found is that peace is freedom from disturbance. It is tranquility. Another one says that peace is the absence of mental stress or anxiety. Now, when I read this, the moment that I read this definition, I thought to myself, this is something that it is impossible to have in the world we live in now. It's impossible under normal circumstances, that is. Impossible. If you think about the things around us, how is it possible for 1 minute to have no mental stress whatsoever? You realize that it is not possible to live on this planet for 1 minute and have nothing to worry about. And again, I say under normal circumstances. If you think about it, the very air that I'm inhaling right now, it's possibly polluted. The water that I drink, it's possibly contaminated with substances. The food that we buy at the supermarket has harmful things in it. I mean, I go on the road and I'm rubbing shoulders with dangerous and deadly people at every turn. There's bacteria and germs lurking in every corner, waiting to do their business. So, in this world, it is not possible to live for 1 minute and have nothing to worry about, even if you don't know what the dangers are that are lurking. There's bacteria that lives even on your skin. So again, I say, under normal circumstances, nobody can have peace of mind in this present world that we live in. But there was once in history, once in the history of the world, that true peace existed on earth. Once. And that was in Eden, right? You realize that when Adam woke up each morning from wherever he slept, he never had to worry about what am I going to eat today? How am I going to provide for my family? I need to hurry and get ready on time to get to work because I need to secure my job. He never had to worry about closing his doors at night to keep out thieves. He never had to worry about air pollution when he breathed. Everything in Adam's world was perfect, and Adam had perfect peace. In fact, when I envision what a typical day for Adam must have been like, I envision that he woke up, probably stretched, and by the time he took his first step, he was surrounded on all sides by an abundance of food. the biggest problem that Adam had was, which one should I choose? Right? Adam had time to take his sweet time and walk and smell every single flower that he saw. He had time. There was nowhere hurrying to go. There was no rush. If he left Eve for a few minutes to go somewhere, he never had to worry about, I wonder if she's safe until I get back. There was no stress. It was, as we say in our modern society, it was easy like Sunday morning. Adam had time to go into the rivers and the lakes and play with the fish and the dolphins. He had time he had time to climb the trees and swing on the vines with the monkeys and play. He could lie down for hours listening to the birds singing and listening to the waterfalls cascading down the mountainsides, and he never had to think, well, it's time for me to hurry home now because I need to go home and prepare for work tomorrow. He could fall asleep in the exact spot where he was staying for hours, and not one ant or one mosquito would pitch on him to harm him or bite him. Man, that was paradise. And Adam and Eve had perfect peace. That was peace. That was the absence of mental stress. But then came the fall. And in the blink of an eye, all of that was lost to man. All of that was gone. All of a sudden, Adam had to worry about finding a safe place, a secure place to keep himself and his family. He had to worry about the dangers lurking in the shadows, waiting and plotting his demise. He had to worry about, what are we going to eat today? How am I going to provide for my family today? Where is safe? Is the air I'm breathing healthy? He had to worry about all of these things all of a sudden. And suddenly, perfect peace of mind that he had was gone. We lost it forever. And ever since that day, man has lost his peace of mind. And as I pointed out earlier, it is impossible to get it back in this world under normal circumstances. But you know, one of the things I want to point out to you, you have probably never thought about it before. But if you think about it, do you realize that almost everything that man does, it's an unconscious or a deliberate attempt to find ultimate peace of mind again? Think about it. Why do people want to fall in love and build a family and have all these things? It's because they want to find peace of mind. Why do people want to be accepted by society and to generally have the things that we dream about? It's because they want to find peace of mind. The flood came and destroyed the earth. And do you know what men did? They built a tower that they thought would take them to heaven because they wanted to know that if a flood came again, they would have the peace of mind, the safety and security of knowing that they would be safe. That's why they built the Tower of Babel. Throughout history, we see empires clashing and fighting against each other, bloodshed and war. And you know what the ultimate desire of these nations was? It was to establish themselves as the ultimate power, to spread their way of life, to have the mental security of knowing that nobody can overcome us. We are secure. Our way of life will be preserved. It was to have the peace of mind of knowing that they were safe and secure. They tried to set up their own paradise, their own nirvana, right? The hanging gardens of Babylon. Babylon are a typical example of this. But what I'm saying is that the ultimate desire, even though it was the attempt was to bring it about through war and bloodshed, the ultimate desire of men throughout the ages has been to find peace of mind. Alexander the Great thought that he would find peace of mind by conquering the entire world. He achieved the feat in 5 years, right? Of course, the opposite happened. He became such a tormented and tortured soul by the age of 32. he was dead, having achieved all his goals. He never found one moment of peace. But ultimately, this is what man has been seeking for. The sad part about it is that time has passed, and that as the ages have rolled by, instead of coming closer to the mark, we have become further and further away from it. Do you realize that today there are 10,000 more reasons to be concerned than there were 1,000 years ago? We have far more dangers. We have weapons that never existed at that time. We have sicknesses that never existed at that time. Pollution in the atmosphere. Different devices and ways have been invented to commit evil. There is far more reason now to have no peace than there were 1,000 years ago. We have become further and further away from the mark as a race. Despite the fact that we have such amazing technology, there has been advances in medical science, in mental health care. Every corner that you turn, a shrink or a psychologist is available. A mental health care professional is available. They have institutions that are established to teach you how to manage your stress and how to find true peace. Despite all of that, man has become more tortured and tormented. Despite all of that, we see a massive rise and increase in hypertension, stroke, stress-related illnesses, heart attack, and suicide. Man is becoming more tortured and tormented. In his quest for peace, he's becoming worse and worse because, as I said earlier, it is impossible in this world under normal circumstances. So what we have done is try to find modern ways of dealing with our stress and finding peace. Now let me try to highlight some of the ways in which man has attempted to do this. Well, one of the things I can think of is that there are certain substances that are used, and people believe they use it. Well, some people smoke and drink and use alcohol as a means of recreation, but the majority of people who do it, you know what they are trying to do? They are trying to find something to help them to cope with the stress and the problems that they are facing every day. That is why you have some people who smoke 3 or 4 packs of cigarettes a day. They don't know how to cope with their stress any other way. You have people who drink 20, 30 bottles of alcohol each day. They have come up with new ways now of making it work, because the relief that these things offer is only temporary. What they do now is to combine drugs. So, for example, they'll combine marijuana and cocaine and they'll smoke that, and it gives you a longer period of high. It helps you to forget about the stress for a little longer and gives you the artificial peace for a little longer. But of course, ultimately what it is doing, it's harming health. It's leading to addiction, and ultimately it will lead to their destruction, right? There's no substance that exists in this world that can really grant a person peace, even though they delude themselves that it works. Another thing that I've seen people do in an attempt to find peace, they seclude themselves and try to run away from the problems. People who are more well off and more wealthy, what they do is they try to live in what we call residential areas or gated communities, because they believe if I can isolate myself from the riffraff and the scallywags in society, if I can isolate myself from the people who I perceive to be the cause of my stress, and live among these more civilized people up here who are less likely to be a stress to me, then I will find peace of mind. I've heard stories of rich people who have gone so far as to purchase their own island. Right? They have purchased their own island, and they have secluded themselves in an attempt to free themselves from the stress caused by other people. People try to live a certain way. They install the most high-tech security systems, and they lock themselves behind these systems, believing that this will give me peace of mind, this will make me happy. But I find it interesting that there was a research done. There was a research, in fact, several researches I read, which showed that rich people are among the highest cases of hypertension, heart attack, stroke, and stress-related illnesses. And I'm not surprised when I read this, because what is happening is that when they attempt to live like this, they're actually living with the sword of Damocles above their heads. Now, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, the sword of Damocles is it's a proverbial phrase which means the more you have, the less happy you are. You know why? Because they lock themselves behind these security systems, behind these iron walls, and they seclude themselves from everybody else. And while they're doing that, they're peeping through their windows looking to see who is plotting to rob me of this, who is plotting to take this away from me. So even though I have it, I can't feel happy with it because I'm trying now to secure it. People who live like this are some of the most unhappy people. And they find that this approach, these systems do nothing to ease their peace of mind. And it's not like they can live behind these barriers and never come out anyway. They have to come out at some point. So they are constantly on high alert, constantly on edge. And in fact, they have less peace than the man who lives out there in the bush in his little cottage. That doesn't work either. Now, another thing that I've noticed, and I've had discussions about this with Christians, right? There are some Christians who have told me that they are considering, more than one person has told me this, they are considering getting a firearm because the condition that the world is in today, you need to have something to protect your family. Now, I can understand the temptation and the logic that some people use to rationalize getting a firearm. It gives some people peace of mind. And if your faith is at the place where you think that you need a firearm, I'm not going to condemn or judge you. But I will tell you from the outset that it's not going to work and it's not going to give you the peace of mind that you're seeking. As I said, I understand the temptation. In a country like Jamaica, for example, a little place like this, the crime rate is, we have one of the highest rates of crime in the world, sadly. And there are things that happen that are so heartbreaking and are of such a lawless nature that the man who does not have the spirit of Christ would be tempted, to do something about it. I'll give you an example. It came on the news a few days ago that they arrested this young boy, 17 years old. He shot a 79-year-old man to death. The man has children, he has grandchildren, he has great-grandchildren. He's known as a stalwart in the community. He is loved and respected by everyone, and this 17-year-old boy shot him to death. Why? Because another man paid him 20,000 Jamaican dollars. Now, to put this in perspective, 20,000 Jamaican dollars is about 130 US dollars. Somebody paid him 130 US dollars to kill this old man. He didn't ask why. He didn't care to know why. All he saw is that he was going to make $130. He went and he took the man's life. Now, when they checked the story, the one who hired him owed the old man some money. The old man went to him to ask for his money, which he refused to give. And so the old man threatened that he was going to take him to court. And this was worth taking the man's life. The man who has all of these children and grandchildren, it was worth taking his life for $130. As I said to the man who does not have the Spirit of God, it would be very tempting to rationalize and reason that I need a firearm to protect myself and to protect my family, because you never know what will happen and when it can happen. So it is just a security measure. Now, as I said, I don't condemn anybody who reason like that, but I am guaranteeing you that that will not give you the peace of mind that you seek. Because just a few years ago, in my community, in my area again, there was this pastor who he came home from work one night, and as he came out of his car, he was engaged in a gunfight with gunmen. He pulled his licensed firearm and returned fire, and in the ensuing battle that took place, the pastor was killed. You know what the gunmen took? They didn't take his wallet, they didn't take his car. All they stole was his firearm. All they wanted was the firearm. So the thing that he depended on to protect himself, the thing that he thought would have given him peace of mind, that is what they killed him for. When you have a firearm, it's not about your safety, it's about who can draw first and who can shoot the straightest. And that certainly would not give me peace of mind. So that approach, and as I said, even though some Christians are reasoning this way, that is not something that will give you peace of mind either. That is trusting in chariots and horses. I'm asking you to bear with me as I give these examples because I'm trying to make a point, right? And I'm getting there. Another thing that people depend on for peace of mind, and this is something that applies to probably almost everybody in the world, they depend on financial stability. One of my batchmates from college, I saw him recently, and he told me the same. He told me as much in those exact words. He said to me, "Listen, I was saying to him that with all of what is happening in the world today, we need to have faith and we need to turn to God more than ever." He said, "Yes, I understand that faith is something you need to have, but practically speaking," he said, "my advice to you is invest as much as you can. Make yourself financially stable and secure, because at the end of the day, it is only those who have assets that will be able to face the crises that are bombarding us on all sides each day." He says, if you are not financially stable, you are going to be in trouble. So his solution for finding peace of mind was his money, his bank account. Now, why do you think people work 12 hours a day? They work 3 jobs. They sacrifice their families, they sacrifice time with God, they give everything up to make a dollar. Why do people do this? You know what they are seeking for? They are seeking for peace of mind. They are seeking for assurance brought about by their own hands that nobody can come and take away my house. Nobody can come and take away my car. I don't have to be looking over my shoulder that when my family has needs, I cannot provide for them. They are looking for the financial stability which will give them peace of mind to know that I can take care of the needs as they arise. And it is the illusion that has overtaken the entire world that if I can become rich and have enough money, I will be okay. Money can buy many, many, many things, but it cannot buy peace of mind. And if you think I'm telling a lie, ask yourself the question, why is it that some of the richest people in the world today are addicted to drugs? They can't live without the drugs. If you do a little research on some of the Hollywood stars who look so glamorous and so enviable when you see them, if you just do a little research on their lives, you will find that many of them, they cannot get up and go through the day without a shot of drugs. Yet they have all the money that they could ever dream of. Why is it that so many of them die from stress-related illnesses? They are being treated for this and being treated for that. Why is it that so many of them commit suicide at the pinnacle of their careers with everything that one could think they would ever dream of? They kill themselves. Let me read an excerpt from Stephen P. Jobs. Now, Stephen Jobs was the man who invented Apple. He was a billionaire. and he died at the age of 56, leaving all his riches behind. But on his dying bed, look at what Steve Jobs said. He said, I reached the pinnacle of success in the business world. In others' eyes, my life is the epitome of success. However, aside from work, I have little joy. This was a billionaire speaking. He says, other than work, I have little joy. In the end, my wealth is only a fact of life that I am accustomed to. At this moment, lying on my bed and recalling my life, I realize that all the recognition and wealth that I took so much pride in have paled and become meaningless in the face of my death. What sobering words. What sad and unfortunate words. This man is saying that with all my billions of dollars, at the end of my life, I realized that it was all meaningless. It never brought me one moment of peace in my life. Money can buy many things, but it cannot buy peace of mind. And we can see it all around us. Now, there are many things, many other things that I could touch on. But the last one that I will point out relates particularly to Christians, right? It relates particularly to people who believe that they can find peace of mind by living good lives and by keeping the law. You realize that there are people who think that they can make themselves good by continual training and by discipline and dedication. And if I can live that good life, then I will feel justification in my mind, and that will give me peace of mind. This is how modern Christianity tries to find peace. But you know, I grew up believing, and I heard Brother Howard say the same thing. I grew up believing that God is flipping through the books of judgment in heaven at the moment and calling random names, and with whoever's name is called, his life is viewed. And if he's not up to par at that moment that his name is called, then he has missed the boat. And that is what I thought in my mind for a few years, right? It was a frightening and traumatic way to live. Not knowing if your name is going to be called today and knowing that you are not ready either way. So your salvation was hanging by a thread. And to me, I realized how miserable that belief and trying to live that way was. Lawkeepers are some of the most tormented and tortured people because they are trying to do something that is impossible, and the weight of judgment is always hanging over their heads. So the point I'm making is that no matter what mankind does, no matter what we have tried over the centuries and over the millennia, nothing has been successful in bringing peace of mind back to the human race. But there is hope, and there's always hope. And God promised to fix that problem. In Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 6, the verse which we have been quoting so many times recently, God made a promise. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. God knew what mankind was longing and yearning and craving for, trying to find, but could never find. And he promised that somebody was going to come who could bring that missing, that elusive element back to the experience of humanity, that element called peace. So somebody was coming called the Prince of Peace. And this was endorsed the night that Jesus was born. In Luke chapter 2 and verse 14, what did the angels say the night that Jesus was born? Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. In that moment, peace came again to the world. In that moment, the one who could give peace came to the world. But was it really to the world that peace came? The period of time that Jesus came to this earth, it was one of the most tumultuous times in history because the Romans were running rampant all over the world. And it was turmoil, and Jesus never did one single thing to change that. So when peace on earth was promised, it's obvious that it was not meant for everybody. In fact, Jesus himself tells us who this peace was meant for. In John chapter 14 and verse 27, speaking to his disciples, Jesus says, "Peace I leave with you." So the peace of Jesus, as I said, it's not for everybody. It is for those who belong to him. He says, "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give unto you." So there's a certain kind of peace that Jesus was giving to his disciples now, which was unique and different from everything else. And he says as much. He says, "Not as the world giveth." So the peace that Jesus came to give, brothers and sisters, is not the same peace. And it's not in the same way that the world tries to find peace. Now, one of the problems that a lot of Christians have, a lot of quote unquote Christians, is that they try to find peace using the methods of the world and doing the things that the world does. So I am proposing to you that if you find that you are receiving peace because of the secure area in which you live, because of the high-tech alarm system that you have, if you find that this is giving you peace, I am submitting to you that this is not the peace of Jesus. If you find that your trust and your peace comes from the firearm that you have, and from the fact that you can now stand on equal footing with gunmen, I am submitting to you that this is not the peace of Jesus. If the peace comes because you have a lot of investments and you have a healthy bank account, I am submitting to you that that peace does not come from Jesus. It might give you may get temporary peace from it, and you may feel good in yourself about it, but that is not the peace that Jesus promised. And if your peace comes from believing that I am a good lawkeeper and I'm living a good life and I'm justified by these actions, that is not the peace of Jesus. Jesus says, "The peace that I give you is not as the world gives it." It's going to be something different. And so I asked myself the question, what kind of peace is this? And how does Jesus give this peace? Now I found the answer in a strange and unusual place. And I say strange and unusual because it is an old covenant verse with wonderful new covenant light. And I found this verse in the book of Isaiah, chapter 26 and verse 3. And I'm submitting to you that this is the ultimate secret to true peace of mind. The ultimate secret. Look at what the verse says. It's beautiful. "Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace." The first part of the verse is beautiful. He doesn't just say you will give him peace. He says perfect peace. Now this is the same peace that Adam had in Eden. This is not the kind of peace that you get from psychologists and shrinks and psychiatrists and motivational speakers. This is perfect peace, the same peace Adam had in Eden. More than that, it's the same peace that angels have in heaven now. God promises that he will give that peace to somebody, to a certain group of people. Now, who are these people? Step number one, whose mind is stayed on thee. This is the ultimate This is the coup de grace. This is the great secret which we all must remember and internalize this morning. You see, a lot of people, you know what their minds are stayed on? It's stayed on the traumatic price tags that we see on goods when we walk into the supermarket or when we go to the pumps to buy gas. It stayed on the rapid increase in crime and violence, the waves of wickedness that we see overtaking our lands. It stayed on what Bill Gates is doing or what the Roman Catholic Church is doing. It stayed on impending vaccination mandates or impending lockdowns. It stayed on all kinds of things. And when our minds are stayed on these things, we become anxious and we become nervous and we start thinking of ways that we can come up with to cope with these things. The verse says, the man who wants to find perfect peace, step number one is that his mind must be stayed on him. That is something we must never forget. And if Jesus was saying it, he would say, abide in me. That is step number one. And when you do this, does God then take on a mystical element called peace and put it on top of your head? That is not what happens at all. Step number two tells you how to complete the formula. Step number two is the completion of the great secret. What does it say? The first thing that you must do is you must stay your mind on him. And the second thing is because he trusted in thee. And to that I say, amen and hallelujah. This is the ultimate secret to peace, brothers and sisters. Your mind must be stayed on him and you must trust in him. What are you trusting in? Do you realize that the moment that you gave your life to Jesus, the moment that you declared that I am now a child of God, do you realize that in that moment, every cell in your body, every blood vessel, every muscle, every sinew, every joint, every hair on your head in that moment became the responsibility. It became the business. It became God's headache. In that moment, you became his headache. Everything that you do is no longer your responsibility. Are you aware of that? Everything that happens in your life from that moment onward is God's business. You are now in the hands of the one who cannot be defeated, the one who cannot be deceived, the one who cannot be turned back or stopped. You are now his property. In that moment, every worry that you ever had about how I will provide for myself and my family, all of those worries are gone. You know why? Because you're now the property of the one who says, bread shall be given him, his water shall be sure. The one who cannot lie says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Your bills will be paid on time. Your rent will be paid. Your children and your family will have food to eat. You will have a safe place to live. It may not be Beverly Hills. It may not be poshness and luxury, but he promises that he will take care of you. You are now his business and his responsibility. It is not your problem anymore. Trusting this and understanding this, you know what it brings? It brings peace. The moment that you become the property of this person, you know what? Every security problem that you ever had is over. You are safer than if you had 10 machine guns and a dozen burglar bars and security systems. You are safer because you're now the property of the one who says, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. The one who says, be not afraid, for the Lord thy God is with thee. The same one who says, 1,000 shall fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. The same one who says, my angels camp. They build up a house around those who fear me and delivers them. There are more on our side than there are on theirs. The moment you become his responsibility, brothers and sisters, everything that you ever had to worry about is finished. You know the problem we have? The problem we have is to understand this and to believe it. That's the problem we have. The only problem, not him, not his incapability to do anything. It's just our inability to believe that what he says is true. You are now his headache, and nothing that happens in your life from that moment on happens by chance or happens by accident. You know what? I want you to think about this. If you put a problem before God and you find that you are still worrying about the problem, it's either you have taken the problem back or you never gave it to him to begin with. Those are the only two possibilities. It's either you have taken the problem back from him or you never gave it to him at all. The moment you start worrying about it, you have taken it out of his hands. So the fight that we have, and the only fight that we have, is to remind ourselves that, listen, I have put this thing in his hand, and now that it is in his hand, it is over and done with, even if physically I am not seeing the manifestation of that. And you know, what I'm about to say, I have no conceitedness and no arrogance in saying it, but I'm stating a fact that I want us to think about. I challenge any gunman, any rapist, any criminal, any evil person, any demon in this universe to touch one head, one hair on the head of any child of God without his permission. It is impossible. Nobody can touch a hair on your head unless he says so. And that, to me, is perfect peace. No gun can give me that assurance. No bank account can give me that assurance. No alarm system can give me that assurance. I am his, and that is all I need to know. Do you think a demon can forcefully come and interfere with me unless he says you may go within 2 feet of him? It's impossible. And I live in that peace and that assurance that whether the wrath of the storm-tossed seas or demons or men or whatever it be, no water can swallow the ship where lies the master of ocean and earth and skies. The moment that you become his property, you are invincible. And I would go as far as to say that if a child of the devil comes to interfere with a child of God, he doesn't know what he's getting into. He's getting in over his head because he's taking on somebody that he cannot defeat. He cannot overcome. So a gunman is not a person that you need to be afraid of. He needs to be afraid of you. And it might sound arrogant in saying this, but brothers and sisters, it's the truth. When the Syrian army came to surround Dothan to take Elisha, and Gehazi was trembling in his boots, Elisha said, Lord, open his eyes that he may see. And when Gehazi opened his eyes and looked on the side of the mountain, it was covered with chariots of horses, so chariots and horses of fire. Far more on our side than there is on theirs. And most of all, he is on our side. He is on our side. So whom shall I fear? That is the secret of true inner peace. True peace of mind means knowing my life is in his hand, and as a result of that, only what he allows can touch me. And if he allows it, I am fine with it. If I pray for life and he gives me death, I am fine with it. Whatever comes, I am fine with it because he is the one who allowed it. And that is true peace of mind, brothers and sisters. And I realize that my time is up. But as I have become accustomed to doing, I'll take a few minutes of my daddy's time. Now, I want to point out to you that true inner peace does not mean that you expect everything to go perfectly all the time. Let me repeat that. True inner peace does not mean that you expect everything to go perfectly all the time. That is not what it means at all. True inner peace means accepting the good and the bad because you understand that he is the one who allows both. That is true inner peace. So if I have a relative who is sick and I pray for the person and the person recovers. Like we heard a wonderful testimony from Sister Shushu last night. Then praise the Lord, that is His will. And I have perfect peace knowing that that is His will. But what if the opposite happens? And the Lord says it's the time for this person to sleep. You know what? I have perfect peace with that as well. Because it is His will and everything He does is done well and perfectly. That is true inner peace. It's accepting both the good and the bad. And, you know, Paul says as much. I'm wrapping up now. Paul says as much in Philippians chapter 4. I'll read a few verses here. In verse 6, Paul says, be careful for nothing. In other words, don't worry about anything. Don't worry about the rising gas prices and the cruelty that you see when you're going, the traumatic prices that you see when you go in the supermarket. Don't worry about any of these things. But in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, do what? Let your requests be made known unto God. Everything that you see happening around you, go to God with it and put it before Him. And the moment you put it in His hand, look at what happens in verse 7. And the peace of God, which does what? Which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Jesus Christ. Why does this peace pass understanding? Because you look at how murderous and bloodthirsty these cutthroats around us are becoming. You look at how they are trying to shut us into a digital prison. You look at the devious and evil things that the systems around us are coming up with. And men are seeing it, and you know what they're doing? Their hearts are failing them for fear. They're trembling in their boots. They're tearing out their hair, trying to come up with ways and means and solutions to deal with these problems because they have nobody to turn to. They have to deal with them on their own. And you know what is happening to you while they are going through all of this stress and trauma? You have peace. You are as calm as a cucumber. You are like Adam in the Garden of Eden, easy like Sunday morning in the midst of the storm. And they look at you and they can't understand because it is a peace that passeth all understanding. Somebody's unmuted. That is the true inner peace, and that is the peace of God. Paul says you are able to have that peace because you put everything before Him. And when you put it there, you leave it there. You pray for something and you don't see any answer. You think He has forgotten about it? No. He has a time and He has a way and a place. And once you have put it there, that problem is done and it's over and finished with. My bill is due today and I don't see the money for the bill. Guess what? I am peaceful and calm because if it doesn't come today, it's His will for it to be late. And He knows why He wants it to be late. And so I am at peace with that. If they come and they cut off the light, I am at peace with that because it is His will. There's no way they could do it without His say so. That is where peace comes from. Paul says, put everything before Him and leave it there. And the peace which passes all understanding will take over your life. He goes on to say in verse 11 and 12. He says, not that I speak in respect of one, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. And instead of saying to be content, I would say to be at peace. For I know both how to be abased and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. What he's saying is that whether I have plentiful, whether I have plenty or I have a little, whether I am on a high or I am on a low, I have learned that in both situations I should be at peace because I understand that He is in charge of everything in my life. And if I am here, He put me here. And he closes off by saying, I can do all things. I can have peace in whatever situation I am in through Christ, which strengtheneth me. This is the secret of the peace which passeth all understanding, knowing that it is He who decides what is best for me at all times. Now, I could go on and on because I have several things that I didn't say, but I always am mindful of not overdoing it, not wearing you, and whenever I think that you have gotten the point, it's always time for me to stop. But in summary, brothers and sisters, what I'm trying to say is there is a way. There is a way in this dark, murky, deadly, dangerous world that we live in. There's a way that today I can have the same peace that Adam had in the Garden of Eden. The time is coming when the Lord will restore physical peace on this earth and paradise will be set up here again. But even before that, there's a way that today I can have the peace that passeth understanding. The peace that I will need to get me through the terrible times that are ahead. There is a way to have true inner peace. And that way is to trust in Him. Trust Him. And, I like what Paul says in verse 11. Paul says, I have learned that in whatsoever state I am, I should be at peace. It's not something that happens overnight, brethren. The natural tendency of humans is a problem arises before you. You think about it and you concern yourself with it and you try to come up with ways to solve it. Trusting and putting it in His hand and leaving it there, it's a process that you have to learn, right? It's something that comes with growth and experience. It comes with growing up unto the perfect man, unto the measure of the stature of Christ, right? It's not something that comes overnight, but it's something that we can attain to by allowing ourselves to live in this reality constantly, to abide in Him and to trust Him. So this is where I'm going to start this morning, brethren. I hope that my few thoughts have helped to encourage you and to remind you. The Bible says, great peace have they that love thy law, and nothing shall offend them. And instead of saying that love thy law, I'm going to say that love thy spirit, right? Because that was stated in an old covenant way. Those who abide in His spirit have great peace, and nothing shall offend them or cause them to worry. I leave you with Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 14. For He is our peace. Not my firearm, not my security system, not my bank account, not my friend. He is our peace. And that is my assurance this morning. So I thank you for your time and your patience. And I encourage you to be blessed this morning and to think on these words.